We want to welcome you today to Journey of Faith. We have two really great couples that attend our church, have been so faithful over the years that we've been in existence. And one of the mission of our church is to build strong Christian families and develop leaders. And that's one thing that Pastor Jerome and Sister Lisa have endeavored to do over these years, is to regularly teach us about marriage, bringing in guests, watching videos and so forth, encouraging us to read books on marriage. And as a result, our marriages at Seeds of Greatness, they are strong. Yes, there are people that have challenges and they've gone through various things, but if you'll seek first the kingdom of God, you'll seek God's way of marriage. You know, God's got a right way to do marriage, and then there's a wrong way to do marriage. And if you read your Bible and you sit under good anointed teachers, you'll learn how to do marriage right. And as a result, I think today, watching these two couples, Carolyn and Raphael and Milt and Michelle, you're going to learn how to do marriage right. And the Holy Spirit on the inside of you, He's a teacher, and He will help you to do marriage right. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy, because Carolyn and Raphael are going to tell you how they separated, but many years later, God brought them back together. And you know, there is a happily ever after, and that's exactly what you will experience. So as you listen to Carolyn and Raphael, you're going to enjoy. Sit back and enjoy the journey.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Figueroa, and this is my husband, Raphael Figueroa, and this is our journey of faith.
In 1976, me and Carolyn were married. In 1977 and 78, I caught a very high substance abuse habit. It caused me to get incarcerated. At that time, me and Carolyn had got divorced. I went on through life juggling with this drug abuse. In 1980, I went into Teen Challenge, got my life together, graduated in 1985, went on, and I was in Puerto Rico, still thinking about my wife and still thinking about my daughter. And I was in a lot of ministries and a lot of speakings, and one day a pastor had spoke and told me that what is one thing that I love the most? And I said, my mother. He says, do you love the Lord? I said, yes. He said, what else? And I said, a wife that I was never a husband, and a daughter that I was never a father. 2 years after that, I was at another service. A pastor spoke into my life and said God was going to restore my marriage. I said, how do you feel that? He said, because I know the Word of God, and what the God says that He will restore what the locusts and the conquerworms have taken away from you, and God's going to restore everything in your life. At that time, I started thinking about my wife. What is she doing now? She had a different aspect of what I went through in life. A lot of people were saying that I was dead, I wasn't dead. She really didn't know. I kept on, and in 1996, I came back into her life. And we started dating all over again, just getting to know each other. We came back, we were both saved. I remember going to her church and they had a shut-in, and starting our life all over again and just enjoying each other. And this time it was different because we both knew the Lord. It wasn't like in 1976 where we didn't know the Lord. So right then I knew it was God's plan for us to get together, because God brought us back together. We was both saved and we both knew the Lord. So it was a journey to know each other and start all over again, forgetting about the past, hurts, disappointments, and trying the best to do what I can do as a man to try to gain her back as my wife.
Well, I'm going to take it back a little bit. We started dating when we were 16 and 19, and we were with one another quite often. As a matter of fact, I'm surprised at how much my mother let me hang out with him at that age. But we had such a great relationship, and I, really cared for him a great deal. We were young when we made the decision to get married, and of course, we really didn't know what a marriage would take, but when you have something like addiction added to the mix, it's even more harder. And personally, I felt like I did not want my life to go that way. So I made the decision to pursue the divorce. And I probably didn't do it in a very good way, but again, I was also going through a lot of depression in regards to my circumstances. So again, like he said, like Raphael says, we actually, we divorced, and then we were living our separate lives. I went through a lot of turmoil and a lot of different things. I thought the world had a lot more to offer me. I was the one that liked to party and I liked to hang out, but that gets very tired, it gets very old. I went through a very bad relationship. So by the time Figgy got back in my life, I was a little apprehensive about going into a relationship again. And one of the things that did help us is the fact that we were both saved, and that was a bonus and a plus. And we actually were going to go through a transition that we were not aware of. My company in New York had decided to relocate me to Delaware.
When she came and told me that her job was being discontinued, I didn't know what she was talking about. Because you wait 20 years to come back, and then she tells you, my job is being discontinued, I gotta move. And I'm like, okay, here I am, come back from Puerto Rico, I live with my brother. And like she said, when she told me that, because I was living with my brother, and I was working, because I'm a butcher by trade, so I was working. And when she told me, I was like, because I stood there and I'm like, because I stood right there I said, Lord, I said, you brought me this back 20 years, and now she's moving? But then, because sometimes we look at stuff like this, and sometimes the Lord will tell us to back up so we can see the whole picture. So I said, Lord didn't want me in New York.
And that's a fact. I can tell you that is a fact.
Because that's where I got.
There was too many distractions in New York.
Yeah, too much, yeah.
Too many distractions.
Yeah.
But it's funny because Louis told me, he said, well, Figgy will go anywhere you go. He's going to go anywhere you go.
Yeah,
And his sister actually told us, his sister Margie, when I came back and we saw one another again, she told me, she said, he always said he was going to get you back. I could not believe that. She said he always said he was going to get you back. So in 1996, us just getting back together and getting acquainted with one another, he made the decision also to come with me to Delaware in October or November, I think it was, of 1996, which was good for us. Because for us to pursue our relationship, we really did not need any outside forces. I had a cousin that actually told him to just leave me alone, let her go on with her life and so on and so forth. And of course, Figgy is very persistent and he didn't take that, he didn't want to go that way. So when we moved to Delaware, it probably was to our benefit because we didn't have our families telling us how we should go. We had to learn one another all over again together. And I think that was better. But the journey of faith also with regards to our marriage is that getting to know one another again was a little difficult for me, because when you're a woman and you're in charge for so long of the household, it's very difficult to accept when someone now is trying to help you. And I remember my husband told me one day that he felt like I didn't allow him to love me. And maybe I was a little bit afraid of that because, sometimes you wonder how long is this going to really last. So, you have that time where you feel like he needs to prove himself to me that this is going to be something that's going to last. So we finally did make the decision to remarry, and we remarried in September of 1997 on my birthday. And we have, you know, built our home, and you know, we've just built, I think, a stronger bond because of we're more mature now. Now, I'm not gonna say that it hasn't been hard, because we're two different people and we do think different ways. We perceive things differently, and that was an adjustment, I believe, for him as well, because I see things in a very motherly, caring way, and I guess as a man, he sees things black and white, and that's it. So that was an adjustment for us both. And we're still going through that particular adjustment, but one of the things that we always had in our favor is we actually enjoy being with one another. We have fun together. We can actually look at one another and know we're in a crowd of people, and we look at one another and we both know at the same time what we're laughing at. And I like that. He can look at me and know when I'm tired, when I'm sleepy. You know, he doesn't put any pressure on me for anything. If I'm just laying around the house and doing nothing, and he could be working because he, you know, was working 2 jobs at the time, he would actually come in and say, okay, do you want me to go out and get you something to eat, or do you want me to get you this? He's always very mindful of going and doing things for me. And I have to admit, I didn't make it always easy, because, again, it was that I was always in control of the household. So now I have to share it with somebody else who has opinions and as well. I've learned so much from him, I have to let you know. I did learn that I'm not always right, that he has some really good input, and I tell you some things that I wish I had listened to him about, you know, when he gave me his suggestions on certain things. He's really smart, and he's very committed, and I find that to be admirable. And he's funny because he actually made me laugh at myself, because I don't know if anyone knows this, but I'm a very super serious person. And he actually has gotten me to be able to laugh at myself and to have fun, you know, live life a little lighter and not look at things so super serious. And, you know, it's been, when we go on our vacations, we actually have a good time because we're friends. And, you know, it's nothing like being a friend with your spouse. And for us, that works for me. How about you?
One thing I could say, and I thank God for bringing us to Seeds of Greatness, because as a married couple, we have learned so much. We have drawn closer. I've been able to develop some good brother love in the Christ. I don't talk to a lot of people. I don't invite a lot of brothers over my house. But one thing I can say, I have really enjoyed the fellowship that I have gotten since we've been coming to Seeds of Greatness. It's been a blessing to me, my wife, to my children, to my grandkids. They love coming here. It's been a blessing all over, you know. And when I came here and I saw all the men here and I saw the married couple, we knew we was in the right place. We knew it. And like I said, we're still striving in our marriage. Marriage is a job. You have to work on it every day. But I love it. I love it, you know, and I thank God for where He brought me from and where I'm at and where He's taking me.
Wasn't that a great testimony of restoration? Do you know, the devil comes in to rob, kill, and destroy, but God is a restorer. And God restored this couple back together again, and as a result, they are flowing in their gifts at Seeds of Greatness Bible Church, and God's blessing them and their families, and we're just so glad that they're a part of our church. You know, God is a restorer. I just can't impress upon you that much, that God wants to restore. Maybe you're watching us today and your marriage is broken. Rehearse this testimony that you've just heard and know that God can make a way where there seems to be no way.
ain't been a good enough father. I don't want to be a good enough father.
Let's go, let's go!
Don't quit! Don't quit!
Hey, you know what? I thought your jump roping routine was really good.
I just got a notification that you moved money from our savings into your checking account.
Can we talk about this later?
You must be the real estate agent.
Well, it's so good to meet you.
Let me show you the house.
This is my favorite place in this house. I call it my war room.
You wrote prayers for each area of your life.
Prayer strategy.
I sure could use some of that. Tony, you should go see her practice tomorrow.
I'm out of town this week.
When were you going to tell me?
I just did.
Tony, that was my favorite rep.
I'm real good. How you doing?
I wish I lived at your house. Whenever my parents are together, they just fight.
Dude, I can't get a pass from you. It'd be easier to baptize a cat.
I just needed to blow off a little steam, okay?
There's one thing we do well. It's fight.
You do not want World War III to break out in your home.
No, I don't.
Just because you argue a lot doesn't mean that you fight well. You got to plead with God so that he can do what only he can do. Then you got to get out of the way and let him do it. You need to do your fighting in prayer.
Keep fighting the good fight. Keep letting your light shine. 'Cause
I've never seen anybody do what you did.
It's time for you to take off the gloves and fight for your marriage.
Keep fighting the good.
Lord, we need an army of believers. Lord, call us to battle. Raise them up, Lord, raise them
Keep
up.
fighting the good, fighting the good, fighting the good fight, good fight.
Hi, my name is Michelle Reeves,
And my name is Milton Reeves.
and this is our journey of faith.
I'll start off. We met in high school, as seniors in high school. Matter of fact, we met right before our senior prom, and I was going to the prom with somebody, and Michelle was going to prom with somebody, and we actually hooked up at the prom, took a picture together, and been together ever since. We dated. I wasn't saved, Michelle wasn't saved. Like I said, we eventually moved in together, and finally Michelle discovered Christ first. She got saved, and after a while, finally, I was seeing a change in her. It was something that I was interested in, so I kind of she's always asked me, Milton, are you ready to go to church? I said, no, I'm not going. And finally, she's always ironed me a shirt and say, finally one day, I was waiting for her to ask me about, ironing me a shirt, and she didn't iron one. I said, look, I was ready to go to church today. You didn't iron me a shirt. So that was the start of it, and we, from that point on, I've been in church ever since. But I told her, I said, I'm not going to be going on. I'm not a church hopper. I'm not going to be going all over these churches. I'm going to find one church, and that's where I'm going to work, settle in. And we did that. We served at a church in Chester till we moved to Delaware, and we left. We found Seeds of Greatness when they first started. We've been here ever since. We do have 3 grown sons, and they're Rodney, Robert, and Milton. I guess a lot of people know them guys. They're now starting their own families, and that's how we got to come to Seeds of Greatness through a friend of Michelle's. Matter of fact, Rosie Tillman, she introduced us to Seeds of Greatness, and we came, and the whole family's been there ever since.
Well, we all know men don't talk a lot, women do. And so I would just like to say that when I met Milton at the end of high school, I was with several friends of mine, and we were in Chester, where we are from. and we were walking down the street, and on the opposite side of the street was a young man who I'd never met or knew. And they said, "There's Milton Reeves." And I looked, and he had on a black leather jacket, tan pants, and black Converse sneakers. And they all were really excited about seeing him. And because I didn't know him, I just looked, never knowing that in my future, I would be at a girlfriend's house who her boyfriend was friends with Milton. And that's where I really met Milton. And Milton and I came from homes that were, I should say my home. I came from a home that was, a lot went on that wasn't positive at all. And when I met him, I didn't have a lot of boyfriends at all. I just had a couple of friends. And when I met Milton, I was starving for affection from a male, meaning I got affection from my mom and home, but as a young lady, I recognized that I was starving for some affection, but I still was waiting for somebody special. And so we met at my girlfriend's house, and I liked him and he seemed to like me, but we didn't start there. We just kind of talked and became friends. And after several weeks, we became closer and closer. And I should say I fell in love with Milton, but I didn't show my feelings and my emotions. That I just knew in my heart that he was somebody special. And from there, we more or less just began to date. And he had a bicycle, a 9-speed bicycle, and I lived about 20 minutes from his home, and he would ride his bike to our house regularly, which was, how long do you think that ride was?
Half hour, 40 minutes.
But he would come, snow, and if the snow wasn't deep, he would still come, rain, snow, whatever, he was always coming, and to visit. And our relationship sort of took off from there. And when I think back now, I had no idea that in time, we went together for 5 years. And within that 5 years, my mother and father separated. And all the children, we just kind of went different ways. And I ended up with Milton. I moved into my oldest brother's home. And that wasn't working for me. And so Milton and father had moved out of his home, and Milton was more or less in his home by himself. So I moved in with Milton, and I stayed there about 3 to 6 months, between 3 to 6 months. And my mother came by one day, and she said, "Michelle," she talked to me, and she told me this wasn't a healthy situation. I don't think I could describe what she said to me.
I can describe it. She said, "Why buy the cow if you get the milk free? So as long as you stay there, he's not going to marry you. As long as you decide to stay there and live with him, he's not going to marry you." And so I left. And within a week. Probably within a month, he's probably getting married, you know. My friends always say she set me up, but we've enjoyed the journey. Like, so we've been married like 39 years. Yeah. And you know, so they haven't always been good years. Like I say, when we first got married, we had a little apartment in Delaware, right off Naaman's Road, and I was working and Michelle was working, and I was having all these visions of we was going to have this money and we was going to be able to do certain things. And once she got pregnant, about 3 years later, she got pregnant with Milton, and she decided she wanted to be a homemaker. So I said, I wasn't even thinking about being a homemaker. I figured we going to work and we going to make this money. So she wanted to be a homemaker, so she came home, and I wasn't in agreement with it, but that's what she wanted to do. So that's what took place.
And excuse me, and the reason why I wanted to stay home with Milton was because I had come out of a household that was, and things had happened to me that I felt very protective over this child, and I thought I could protect him from some things that I had gone through, not knowing that it really takes God, Christ, for the protection that you really need, because you can't be everywhere. When you're not saved, you don't realize it. You think you can, but you can't. And then you have all these things that are going on inside of you, all this baggage that you've brought to the marriage. And by me bringing my baggage into the marriage, I finally said to myself when Milton was 2, I need help, else I'm not going to be able to stay married. I lived in an environment where people always were divorcing or always had issues, always had troubles. And so, and I thought about my grandmother and the God that she served, because I was just religious at the time. And I felt like I needed the God of my grandmother now, because I needed power in order to stay in order to stay married. And I wanted desperately for my son, or at that time, to have his father, because that was very important to me, because my father was never in my life, and my stepfather raised me, helped to raise me. And so it was very important to me that I was willing to fight and give my life over to the Lord, this God of my grandmother's, in order to stay married, not knowing what that was going to, what that really meant. I didn't know what that really meant to come into salvation and being able to being able to stand and fight through it. And I got hold of this book from a pastor. It's called The Christian Family by Dr. Fred Price. And I literally held on to that book with dear life, because that was all I had to learn how to grow in this salvation that I I got saved when Milton was 2, and I held on to that book because it helped you to learn how to be a wife and a mother and have a family, a healthy family. So that was that became so important to me, that book, and I learned so much out of it. And again, when you first get saved, you think, well, this is it. But no, it's a journey, it's a process. It takes time. And so I got hold of more books. Prayers That Availeth Much, when it first was, one of the first ones I had was a yellow book. I got hold of that book, and I started learning how to pray, how to stand in the gap. And Milton was in the lodge, a part of a lodge, and every Thursday he would go to meetings, and he had to pay dues, and all those things. And the Lord was just so amazing how he taught me how to stand. And even though when you first get saved, you think, and you're learning things, but now that I'm where I am now, it's like, oh my God, the journey was just amazing, amazing how God brought us through, taught us things, trained us. Oh my God, if I could just tell the story, my God. But the main thing was I was in love with this man. I adored him. I loved him, and we were very close. It was like Milton was very kind, generous towards the children and I. But the Lord, even in that, with getting that book and having gone to this church, and this pastor, I went to him for some counseling, marriage counseling, and when I went there, he said to me, he gave me a prophetic word. He said, God is going to teach your husband how to provide for you and those children. And I held on to that because I had I had so many things going on inside of me, all this baggage that I had brought into the marriage, and I wanted to be a wife to Milton. And at that time, I was in a position where being a wife to him meant for me, I had to learn how to be one, because so many issues and so many things that I had gone through, it wasn't always a good role model for me, because I had gone through so much. Oh, it's amazing. Some things I just can't share, but even in that, and I had my reasons why I wanted to be a homemaker. Again, and that was so important for me, because I knew that there must be something greater or better for us, and I was willing to fight for it. And again, Milton came out of a household where he had a lot of struggles, and a lot of things weren't demonstrated to him, and his father wasn't able to show him. He loved him, but he wasn't able to demonstrate it. And I knew, I had learned that, and his mother had what was going on in her life at the time that she was raising him. And I knew this man needed so much more than just me having a job. And
even with that, You know, being a provider, like I've always been blessed to get a good job. I worked in a steel mill for like 10 years, and somebody just came to me and said that they're hiring for the electric company, and that's all I had to do is go put an application in, and put an application in. Been there like 34 years now, you know, and I've always been able to, but always been on jobs where you can make overtime, so we didn't really need a second income. We've always been able to travel and do things that people, the two household incomes are able to do because of the jobs that I was always able to afford. And that's just a blessing of God to be able to put you in those positions where, you know, say, well, how can you get a job and you really don't have to apply for them? When I worked at the electric company, when I worked for the steel mill, I mean, I just went down to the steel mill one day with a guy, and they asked me, did I want a job? You know what I mean? So I just, you know, I got a job from there. So they worked there 10 years. And then the job at the electric company, somebody said that they're hiring, and somebody just submit an application, and I've been there ever since. But you know, even, you know, God's been faithful. He's always taken care of us. You know, I mean, we've never been without. We've always had, you know, we've always had 2 cars. We always had a nice home, and I always look at my home as it's always been peaceful there. You know what I mean? I say one thing about Michelle, like she's if you are a homemaker, be a homemaker. You know what I mean? Michelle's always, the house is always clean, food is always prepared. I mean, we kind of run and joke that says I only wear 3 pair of underwear because she washes them before I get to the 4th pair. She's washed them and put it back in the drawer. And I mean, that's a homemaker. That's somebody who always has things prepared for you. And so it's not like, you know, you're home, and I mean, every morning she gets up, spends time with the Lord. You know what I mean? You know, 4 o'clock she's up, and that's what a home. That's a homemaker. You know what I mean? I've never had to go in the house and I've been embarrassed. You know what I mean? If something's dirty. I mean, the house is never dirty. For her, it's like, you know, don't bring nobody over, because no, the house is always, it's nice enough for me. It's nice enough for anybody else who wants to come here. You know what I mean? So like I said, she's great at what she does, and I mean, and I've always loved her. Always, like, you know, I'll tell her you need to cut back on this, but then I'll still spend money on buying her something else that she might want, because she deserves it. You know what I mean? And, you know, if you put up with me for, you know, the last 40-some years, you deserve some nice things.
You know, and again, I just thank God for Milton. I thank God for the children that we have, because I guess we went through so much. And again, I had the twins, and in raising them, I really felt like, well, I might as well stay home for sure, because I was getting a little, every now and then I would get a little job here or there, but I was able to take little Milton with me. My brother had a store and I worked there, and I was able to take Milton with me. But after I had the twins, then it just changed everything. And so again, even then, in raising them, you can only live what you learn. And a lot of things I was trying to implement in our home, and I was still fighting the issues of my past, and reliving them in some ways of raising my children, and some things that I know that Milton and I, we would have liked to have done better, but we didn't have the knowledge. We were there, we loved them, they were dear to our hearts, but still some of the anger, the anxiety, the stress of what we had gone through, sometimes it still spilled over into our home and towards our children. And but I say we didn't. We were always still able to raise them with love, and thank God I got saved, because I was able to love them with the love of Christ, even when they were little, and that meant loving them, meaning love them with the love of Christ, but only what I had learned at that particular time and year and season of our lives. It was like every year we were growing, we would be growing, but I could only implement in our family and what I had learned at that particular time.
You know, even in learning though, and there's a lot of books out there on parenting and you know, books on just marriage, books on the family. A lot of times we don't have, like, well, I didn't grow up in a home with a loving mother and father that showed a lot of affection and things of that nature. But the thing is, it's books out there that teach you what you need to know. Yes. I mean, books on finance. So you shouldn't. Yes. There's no need to struggle in this day and time with with marital issues, with raising children. And like I say, you get 2 or 3 books. Like I said, once you read 10 books on a subject, you become an expert. So, you know, I mean, you read enough books, and you know, I was listening to somebody was saying, like, you should always read 10 pages of a good book every day. So if you read 10 pages of a good book every day, then pretty soon you're going to be smart. I mean, you have to be wiser just by the information that you pick up. And a lot of times you can tell by what you're thinking about by what comes out of your mouth. When you start going to work and telling people you should be trying to do this and you should be trying to do that, then you're learning things. And that's where you should be. Always try to share some information with somebody else who you see might be struggling. But like I said, there's enough books out there. If you need to know some name of books, you can come see me. Pastor Ron, he has thousands of books. I mean, he always tells you, you know, read. When somebody's talking about a good title, I mean, me and Rick Evans was talking a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me about a book he's reading. And I write that stuff down on my phone. So when I'm available, I'll go pick the book up. Because if it's good to him, it's got to be something in the good to book for me. You know what I mean? I want to live long and strong with nothing wrong, and I want to have plenty of money, and I want to do a whole bunch of things. But unless I learn how to do these things, I mean, you'll never get there if you don't have a plan. You need to put a plan together. You know what I mean? How many children you want to have? You know what I mean? Where you want them to go to school at? You know, all these things you need to be talking about even before you get married. And then when you get married, try to put the stuff, have a 10-year plan. You know what I mean? Somebody told me about a 10-year plan. I said, 10-year plan, I don't know what I'm going to do next year. But the thing is, if you don't have a 10-year plan, then 10 years from now, don't be dissatisfied or upset if you don't get to where you need to be. So, you know, a lot of little things like this you can put in place. Work on something every day. Try to be better tomorrow than what you are today. And, you know, life goes on. You know, you'll be successful in whatever you try to do.
I never wasted the money that came into the household, other than the children and I doing little things here or there. But I always tried to respect, and because I read too about financial things, I started to grasp and understand that the money that came into our household, we had to be wise with it. So I never ran up. You could never say I had 10 credit cards, 7 credit cards, 3 credit cards. Maybe I might have had two, Sears and one other for ladies. But I never abused them. You can never say I ran up a credit card for $5,000 during our marriage. No, because again, I had to go to a book, and I learned early on that the finances that came into our home were valuable. But I would give. I learned how to give early in tithing. I wasn't always able to, when he wasn't saved, I could only tithe off of my grocery money, or the money that came into the household that he allowed me to have. When he was out in the world, I was still paying the bills. But when he came into the world, he took all that over, and began to do a great job with it, and learned as he went along through studying, reading, and things like that. He grew, and that's the reason why we were able to come out, pay our mortgage off, and the cars were paid for. Credit cards that we might have had were paid off. And we got to a place where we just didn't have very much debt. And so now we're at a place where we can do so many things. We're remodeling our home because we don't know, we haven't made the decision whether we're going to live there or move on.
We're not moving.
But we are remodeling our home at this time. So we're able to do a lot more than what we were before. And even now, even though we've paid off so many things, we still don't abuse the money, our finances, because we know that, you know, we have to prepare for our future.
I mean, even one thing about marriage, you need to be in agreement. You know, you have to, you know, like even sometimes now I'm gonna give somebody some money. I always tell Michelle, look, I'm gonna give them some money. And a lot of times, even on Sunday, sometimes I even leave my wallet in the church. I mean, leave my wallet in the car. I said, because I know somebody's going to see a need and give them money. If I don't have it that time, then I won't take my money, even in the church, because if I see a need, I like to give. I mean, it makes me feel good to give. You know, I don't look at it, I never give begrudgingly. If somebody said they need something, I give it to them, and don't worry about it. I mean, because I've been well taken care of. I mean, God has always provided for us.
Yes.
You know, always provided for us. You know, we don't live above our means. You know what I mean? Like I was talking, you see people say, well, I got to go. I want to buy a brand new car. I don't need to buy a brand new car, because if I buy a brand new car, it's for show somebody else that I can afford a brand new car. I'd rather have the money and drive something that is already paid for until I get to the point where I can pay cash for the brand new car. Then I'll go ahead and do that. But the thing is, you have to be smart about your money. And be in agreement with what you do. I mean, if you decide to go on vacation, you want to spend some extra money, then make sure that your bills are paid. You don't want to come home from vacation and have a whole lot of debt.
So Milton and I, truly, we have been blessed. And I'm looking forward to someday ministering more to young ladies. I know the call for me to minister to young ladies is there, because I can come in the room and I can even come to church and just see that there's something different in a woman. And sometimes if I'm led by the Spirit, I'll say something to them. If not, I'll just be praying for them. But even as I was maturing in my marriage, when I was in my late 20s and had gotten saved, and 30s and 40s, whatever, there were young people, there were other married women along my path who the Lord would always have me speaking into their lives. And a lot of times it was life and death situations, meaning whether the marriage was going to live or die. And I have women now, sister-in-law, women who I went to high school with, who were married, just women along my path, my pathway, whose marriages are still together because the Holy Spirit would use me to minister to them. And at the time, I didn't even realize that the impact I was making on them, in their lives and within their marriages, to share with them what I had gone through. Only the things that God was allowing me to share at that particular time, not always going into depth, but just things that I was able to share with them and share the word with them. And now a lot of these couples are still married. And I thank and praise God that He was able to use me and in those seasons of my life. And I thank God for my husband. I thank God for the day that he got saved. He had gone to Blue Mountain Christian Retreat with a church that we were in Chester, and I had been praying for Milton, and I had gone to a revival, and this pastor had called me out, and 3 other ladies at the same time. He said, God said, you all have been praying desperately. You've been praying desperately. And God said, I've heard your cry. He said, in 30 days, you're going to see a miracle. Well, within a short period of time, Milton went to Blue Mountain Christian Retreat with some other gentlemen. And when he came back in the house, I was preparing dinner, and I had my back to him. And when I turned around, Milton was lit up like a light bulb. And he said, I got saved. And I was so shocked, I screamed, and I scared him. But I was just so grateful to God that God kept His word. Milton was in the lodge, and God spoke to me one morning early, and He said to me, all those things that Milton uses, it's a hat, gloves, and things, apron, all those things, I want you to get them together, put them in a box. And I was sitting on top of the stairs, I said, He would be furious with me. And I said, and I kept saying, Lord, and He said, get them together, put them in a box, take them down to the basement. He said, I'll handle him. And I was really afraid, because I knew that what that meant to him at that time. But I had been reading books again. I had been reading books, and I knew that this lodge thing was not of God, because it was so secretive. And the things of God, they're open. And so I did what God asked me to do. I took everything that I could collect off of his dresser, out of his drawers, and I took all this stuff downstairs, and I put it in a box and put it in the basement. And when he came home, I said to myself, well, I just looked at him, and I told him what the Lord had told me. And I was shocked. I was shocked. He did not scream. He did not holler. He hardly even responded. And I knew it was God, because he was committed to that lodge. And I knew it was God. And those are the things that along my way in this journey with God, that He has spoken to my heart and asked me to do things, and I've been obedient to Him. And because of the obedience, Milton said to me, I know I'm hopping along, but Milton said to me one day, there were about 3 or 4 churches the kids and I had been to, but I was desperate. I wanted God, because once you tasted of Him, it's no turning back. And I was desperate and I needed him. And I was in a lot of churches that it was just, I knew in my own heart a lot of things were just out of order, out of place. You stay too late, you stay too long. And I knew I needed to serve him. And Milton, and finally this other church that I was in, something happened and they split. And Milton looked at me one day because he knew I was desperate, I guess. And he said, Michelle, I'm gonna find you a church. He said, because I guess he was tired of me dragging his children around too, because I was desperate. And I just looked at him. He said, I'm gonna find a church. But he never said anything about himself. He just said, I'm gonna find a church for you all. And one day Milton went to a funeral and he came home. He said, I found a church. He said, this man was preaching good. And he got up and got dressed and went with us. And little Milton was 12. And little Milton because Milton was out of the house a lot, little Milton had kind of taken on the role of a father figure to Ronnie Robert in some ways. Even though Milton was there, but still there was times that young Milton would. And when Milton came in and was taking his place, little Milton that bothered Milton. It was like, hey, I've been doing a lot of things, but my husband wasn't grown enough in the Lord to know that Milton felt that way. And so, but in time and through prayer, Milton backed up and let his father come in and do what he needed to do as the head of our household. And Milton took over, learned how to pay tithes, and we got to the place where I, as a wife, I said, that tithe and offering, I never looked at it as ours anymore. It belonged to God. And that's how we still are. I never look at that tithe as something we can borrow from or take from or use like we want to use it. And I'm just so grateful that we have learned along the way how to be tithers and offering givers.
When you start tithing, it kind of becomes easy when you know. You know, I mean, I told Pastor Ron one time, I said, look, you know, the money I give, you know, to the church is, I mean, once I give it, it's gone. It's in your hands. You're responsible for it. So I'm not going to be following around behind you to see what you do with the money. I gave it. I mean, now you're responsible for it. So when you think that way, I mean, you're not trying to run around, well, what they doing with my money? It's not your money anymore. You gave it to the Lord for the Lord's work.
Yes.
And when you get that mindset, it's easy to pay tithes. It's easy to give offerings. You know what I mean? And our church don't beg. I mean, if they need something, they'll say they need something, but they're not begging. We need $10 more. So and you see what's doing with the money. We've been around for how long? And we got a new building. We got parking lot done.
Years.
We got a whole bunch of stuff done. So you
can see your money.
You see where your money's going.
You actually can see it. For the first time, we can see, one of the first times, because our last church we were in for 10 years, they did well with the money. And coming here for 16 years, you can see the blessings of God. The tithe and offering is being used wisely. And having come here, I used to go to prayer at 6 o'clock in the morning over at Victory, because we were there for a year. And I would get up and go at 6 o'clock in the morning, every morning just about. And I met Rosie Tillman, and she told me about a young pastor who was starting a church. And at first I was like, oh, I don't want to start any church. And then she kept talking so well about it. And so finally I went to the church, I visited it, and they were at the Delaware Community, Del Tech. And when I walked in, my God, the presence of the Lord was there. And Milton, for 2 weeks I went, and my husband came, and then my children came. And I tell you, it's been nothing but a blessing, nothing but a blessing. Our pastor and his wife, their leadership that they have chosen, the board, it's just been an overwhelming blessing. Our lives have been enriched by serving here at Seeds of Greatness Church. And I am so grateful. Some things you can't tell people about, you can't describe it.
I used to tell people, look, when I invite them to the church, I say, you can come. If you really like your church, I wouldn't come if I was you. Because, you know, once you get there and you see what's going on, it's going to draw you. You know, the Spirit is there. It will draw you. But like I said, this has been a journey. For me and Michelle, we'll be 40 years in 2017. It's been 40 great years. I've enjoyed it a great deal. She's special, and I mean I love her. She still has those pretty eyes she had when she was 17, you know what I mean? Some things just don't change.
You know, we start out our marriages sometimes knowing very little. But because of the grace of God and the mercy of God, He helps us to grow together. And we have to be patient with one another, give one another space and grace to grow. And that's exactly what happened with Milt and Michelle. They weren't even saved when they got married, but then Michelle got married, and she had to have patience, and she had to be led by the Holy Spirit. And then Milt gave his life to the Lord, and they've had to grow together. And that's what marriage is all about. It's growing. It's being kind, gentle, patient with one another, and allow one another to grow at their pace. You know, my husband and I were getting ready to celebrate 45 years of marriage. And the one thing I would say about marriage, it's one day at a time. And in that one day, you give it your best. And that's what Milt and Michelle are doing where their marriage are concerned. They're taking one day at a time, and it is a journey. It's a journey of faith. It's a journey of love, a journey of patience. It's a journey of growing together. And we want to encourage you that as you're on your journey, that's what you need to do, is use patience, use kindness, grow in the fruit of the Spirit. And as a result, your marriage will reach a level that you never dreamed was possible. And you can grow in joy and happiness and grow better together and not grow bitter together. God bless you as you seek first His kingdom. And remember, like Milt said, read a good book. If your marriage isn't working right, get the information. It's out there. And part of Journey of Faith is giving you the right information to improve and better your marriage. God bless you today.